Chew on this. Today, we're going to talk about how chewing not only affects your health, but how it affects the shape of your face. Chewing is also known as mastication, and it has evolved over the years just like we have. Since the agricultural revolution, we don't chew the same way our ancestors did, and that's changed the shape of things. The chewing habits of our ancestors give us insight as to what's happening in human evolution. So you can see in this picture that we used to lean forward posture, and then we started standing up. Well, guess what's happening? We're starting to go back down and having that forward head posture because we can't breathe. And a lot of it has to do with our eating habits and how we feed our kids from the beginning. Since the Industrial Revolution, women went back to work. We started bottle feeding. We started having more processed, softer foods. Back in the caveman days, we had tough foods. There wasn't a way to tenderize them. So a lot of times parents would chew the food and then give it to their kids to chew the food. And women nursed until kids were 3 to 5 years old. When we nurse, we use our tongue up against the roof of our mouth and we create the suck, swallow, breathe pattern. And when our tongue is on the roof of our mouth, it grows our arch wider. When we use a bottle, we suck with our cheek muscles and we develop different muscles of our face and neck. And when our tongue is down because we're bottle feeding a lot of times, or if we lay the baby back and we lay the baby down when we feed them, sometimes that fluid gets in the ears. A lot of times if kids have chronic ear infections or are getting tubes in their ears, it's because of how they were fed as an infant. Or you lay them down with a bottle in the crib. We never want to put our kids to bed with a bottle because not only can it cause fluid in the ears when they're laying down drinking the bottle, it can cause bottle rot cavities, meaning that that milk or whatever you're putting in the bottle is sitting on the teeth and rotting the teeth out. And a lot of people feel like you're going to lose the baby teeth anyway. What's the big deal? The problem is it is a big deal because those baby teeth hold the space for the permanent teeth. They also create a space for the tongue. And when the tongue doesn't have the proper space, or even if you're sucking your thumb and you push these teeth out with that habit, you don't know where to put your tongue is down, it's going to create low posture. It's going to create the jaws growing differently. It could create crowded teeth. It could wreak havoc in your mouth. And it's a lot of things that we don't look at in kids until they're 7 or 8. Most traditional orthodontists will tell you to wait until your kids have lost all of their baby teeth. The problem is it's a little too late. By the time they're 7 or 8, they've had 80% of their growth and development. So if we can reach a lot of these kids when they're 2 to 6, we can use their tongue and breathing exercises to not only help regulate their emotions, but to breathe better, to sleep better, to function better. And again, form follows function is going to help them have beautiful faces versus an open mouth breather face or a forward head posture or, a neck like me. If you want them to look like this versus this, it's probably a good idea that you look at what's going on in your kid's mouth and how are you feeding them from a young age, what's going to happen to their growth and development. And again, I thought a lot of things were going to happen before I had a daughter. And then I had a daughter with sensory issues that spit out toothpaste and had a lot of these issues. As a mom, as a dental hygienist, and now as a myofunctional therapist, I wish I had known this stuff when my daughter was younger, which is why I talk about it all the time. If you'd like to follow me, I have a Facebook group where I talk about checkup from the neck up once a week. You can be more interactive with me. The need to optimize food supplies is what changed our food and had the evolution of mastication and why we don't chew our foods as much now. We have smoothies, we drink food, we suck through a straw a lot more. So we are using different muscles of our head and neck. And a lot of times we are tongue-tied. So again, back in the day, we had doulas, they had this fingernail, and when babies were born, they would just take that fingernail and clip that frenum underneath the tongue. So a lot more people are tongue-tied now, meaning that they can't lift their tongue when they open really wide to the roof of their mouth without closing down. And so that affects tongue placement, how you're using your tongue, and form follows function. So when you're functioning that way and your tongue is not functioning properly, you're using muscles of your neck, of your shoulders, of your back. If you're grinding, it can cause headaches and other issues. So it's really important that you look at how are you chewing? What types of foods are you chewing? Are you having clenching, grinding, snoring? Are you having some TMJ issues? Are you having headaches? Are you having shoulder or neck ache? This can all be because of not chewing properly. Your teeth are not contacting together because if your tongue is down, and it's not on the roof of your mouth, then just the cheek pressure can sink you in and cave you in and create more crowding. So your tongue plays a bigger role than we once thought. So where is your tongue right now? Think about it. Is it resting on the roof of your mouth? Is it touching your lower teeth, or is it floating somewhere above? Where your tongue is resting is going to be really important to what is happening in your mouth and how healthy you are. Cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death in the United States, and 64 million people have some form of gum disease, whether it's early gingivitis or late stage periodontitis. But when you breathe through your mouth and you have bleeding gums, all of that bacteria is now going into your bloodstream, into your gut. You're swallowing it. You're swallowing more air. So this is affecting our health, and we don't even realize it. And with the more processed foods, we have more sugars. So we have a high incidence of diabetes, and we have a lot of people that are undiagnosed diabetic as well. So if you think about how all this stuff is connected and why heart disease is the leading cause of death in the United States, you might want to think about, what are you eating? What foods are you choosing to consume? And how are you breathing? Because all of this is going to affect your health. You can live without food for 3 weeks, without water or sleep for 3 days, but you can't live without oxygen for more than 4 to 6 minutes. And if you can't chew, swallow, and breathe at the same time, you're getting less oxygen to your brain, less oxygen to your blood. And that is going to affect your mood, your focus, your sleep. All of this stuff then is going to trickle down and affect your health. So it's really important that we connect the dots and we look at all this stuff, because chewing is way more important than we once thought. It also stimulates saliva. So in saliva, it actually has digestive enzymes. So the more you chew, the more digestive enzymes you create, the more the food breaks down in your mouth before it even gets to your gut. So then your gut doesn't have to work harder. So think about that. The more you chew, the more saliva you produce, the more enzymes you make, the better your gut health is going to be. So when you're not chewing as much, which we chew a lot less than we should, most people chew anywhere from 5 to 10 times before they swallow. That's not a lot to create all of those digestive enzymes. So the more you chew, the better for you, the better for your gut, the better for your health. Our ancestors chewed way more than us, mostly because they didn't have tools to cut up their meat, and their meat was tougher. But they used more energy as well. So they burned more body fat and they slept better. They also slept with the cycle of the sun. They didn't have all of this fake light. They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have things that were disrupting their circadian rhythm. They went by the sunrise and the sunset. They had less digestive issues. They used more energy, and they absorbed more nutrients because they chewed their food more. It wasn't processed. It was just straight off the land. So that's why they were much healthier in that regard, because of their diet and their food. And our food has changed. It doesn't give us the same nutrients that we had. That's why there's so many supplements, but it can. And more people are starting to grow their own food for that reason. So it's been suggested that before we processed food and had all these tools to cut it up, we actually used more energy during the day, even just to chew. So think about that eating your meal was almost like having a workout, because you chewed a lot more and it took more time to eat our meals. There were no fast food. There were no drive-ins. There was no eating in your car. You had to kill your food, clean your food, cook your food, and then chew your food. That required a whole lot of energy that we're not expanding these days. So when they compare apes to men, what they figured out was that apes chewed 4 to 4.5 hours a day versus man, who chews probably about 35 minutes a day now. That's a huge difference. So you can see why the shapes of our faces and our jaws are starting to change, and why we don't have enough room for our wisdom teeth, why we have crowded teeth, why we have more recession, cavities, gum disease. All of this stuff really begins with our food supply and how we eat and how we chew, how we breathe. Dr. Kevin Boyd is a pediatric dentist with over 20 years of experience in Chicago. He also has a degree in human nutrition and dietetics, and he also has advanced education in orthodontics for growing children. And I have learned so much from him about what's happening with faces and growth and development since the agricultural revolution. And he has actually opened my eyes up to the fact that we have a whole segment of population in our children that are not being served. because we just jump right over to baby teeth to 7 or 8 years old and needing orthodontics. What happens in between with how our kids are growing their airway because of how we're chewing and eating now? And this is something that we need to look at and seek out providers that can help our kids sooner rather than later. Sometimes if you can intercept this stuff, they won't need braces for a really long time. My daughter wore braces for 10 years, had them on and off 3 different times. Things moved around. That shouldn't need to happen. We should be able to look at things sooner before they wear braces and we realize that we didn't treat an underlying cause and now their function has shifted their teeth back again. So now they have to be put back in braces. So this went on a few different times before I even knew any of this was happening. And it also caused her to bedwet, have dark circles under her eyes, walk on her tiptoes, sleep with her butt up in the air. And it was affecting her ability to focus and her behavior. And I just thought I was a terrible mom. And then when I found out all this had to do with your mouth and I was a dental hygienist, her dad was a dentist, I was like, what? Why are they not teaching us this stuff? Why didn't I know this? I've worked in this part of the body since I was 16 years old and I had no idea about any of this stuff. And I didn't even learn about chewing until after I learned about the mouth breathing stuff. So now you can see why I'm such an advocate for what happens from the neck up and what we need to look for and what we need to do, because it all starts from the head down. And what's happening in our gut is directly correlated to how we're chewing and what we put in our mouth and how we're breathing. If we're breathing in too much air, or we can't suck, swallow, and breathe at the same time, or we can't chew, swallow, and breathe at the same time, if our kids are smacking their food, if they're having to take a breath or pause, then you know that they're having a hard time breathing and eating at the same time. That's going to affect some things, don't you think? And many parents don't realize that it's much easier to fix and manipulate a growing child before those sutures actually connect. So there's all different kinds of sutures on the head that will grow and fuse as your child gets older. And in your mouth, down the middle of their palate, is one of them. So if you can get to an early interception and you can see that there's no spaces between the baby teeth, you know that your child is going to have an airway issue. So if you can't fit a nickel between each of your child's baby teeth, you already know that they're going to have an airway problem that they're going to grow into. Better to intervene when they're 2 or 3, when you can use their growth and development to manipulate that and widen their arch, to make room for their tongue and help them breathe better, because the roof of your mouth is the floor of your nasal sinus. And if it's vaulted and there's not enough space for your tongue and those permanent teeth that are going to come in, if your baby teeth are really tight together, you know it's going to be a problem. So why not fix it when it's going to be less invasive, when it's going to cost less, and it's going to be easier on you and your child? So not only can we see that there are problems currently, we can see that there's going to be problems in the future by looking at these things and evaluating kids sooner. A lot of the problems are an overbite, an underbite, crowding, a tongue thrust swallow, forward head posture, sitting with your head posture, open mouth. These are all things that you can look for in your child and get them evaluated. It's much easier to fix and can be corrected in a shorter amount of time as they're growing. We can turn a narrow arch into a U-shaped arch and just change the face of our kids. Here's a picture of a before and after of what can happen if you intervene sooner. You can see the difference in how the child looks, how the arch looks. So you can imagine that they were going to breathe better, sleep better, and perform better. Chewing, breathing, airway all go together with peak performance as well. So let's talk about some of the definitions. So biting is biting into something and tearing your food to make it into little pieces to make it easier to chew. Chewing is breaking down the food into smaller pieces with your jaw muscle, whether you're chewing or grinding. Chewing is an essential part of digestion because it helps stimulate saliva production, which creates enzymes which are going to break down your food, which are going to make it easier for you to digest that food. So you can see why chewing is important. We talked about it a little bit earlier. The mechanical breakdown of the food is also going to help you absorb nutrients better once it gets into your gut. Because remember, in your gut, you have all of that acid. So a lot of those nutrients are going to have to survive the acid once it gets into the stomach. So we want to be able to absorb a lot of these foods. And that's why one of the doctors that I work with tests your urine to see, are you peeing out a lot of those nutrients, or is your body absorbing it? Because that's another thing that we can look at. So there's all these tests that we can run. She says if you're not testing, you're guessing. So we need to look at a lot of that stuff too. If you're unable to lose weight, if you're unable to gain weight, if you have irritable bowel, if you have an upset stomach, a lot of these things are going to have to do with how you're chewing, what you're eating, and what's happening with your digestion. And are you breathing in air? If you have irritable bowel or GERD, it might have to do with how you're chewing and breathing, because you're getting too much air on that swallow, and it's also creating gastric reflux. On average, we should really be chewing 20 to 30 times. How many of you are chewing your food that much before you swallow it? Not this girl. So I have to get better at it. I have to admit, I have been told that I eat really, really fast, and I do. So I have to really think about slowing down and chewing my food a lot of times. Since becoming a myofunctional therapist, I am way more aware of how I'm breathing, how I'm chewing, and what's going on in my body. Missing teeth, crowded teeth, spaces, malaligned teeth, these are all going to affect your chewing and your digestion. So having orthodontics is more than just a straight white teeth. It's about form and function and being able to breathe better. So these are a reason that you need to look at all of this stuff. And not all doctors are created the same. I learned that the hard way through going through cancer and just finding someone who can work with what's going on in my body. I am out of the norm. So I had to find a doctor that got to the root cause, could treat me with diet, could test what was going on in my body, in order for me to be able to feel good and sleep better. And it is crazy what I've learned as far as all this stuff is connected, and how our healthcare system is really a sick care system. They treat sick people, and they don't necessarily tell you how to get healthy. I had to change a lot of what I was doing. Chewing was one of them. Food choices were another one. How I was breathing. Crazy how all of this stuff is connected, and we're not talking about it. If you suspect that you have an open bite, a tongue thrust, snoring, clenching, grinding, headaches, any of this stuff, you might want to look at how your teeth are coming together. How are you chewing? Have you lost teeth? People don't think about it. A lot of times they just get teeth extracted because it's cheaper. They don't want to pay for a root canal. They don't want to pay for an implant because, yes, they're more expensive. But when you get those out and your teeth start shifting, it's going to affect your chewing, which is going to affect everything else. If you know someone that's suffering from these issues, please contact me if I can help you. If not, Google it and look up more information. What happens in your mouth is going to affect what's happening in your body, because a healthy mouth is a healthy body and a happy, healthy life. I make these videos once a week, kind of a checkup from the neck up. If you'd like to know more, like, comment, subscribe, and share. I make these videos to help as many people as possible learn what's going in their body and how to connect the dots from your mouth to your overall health. Because if your mouth's not healthy, the rest of you is not healthy. No pain does not mean no problem. As always, thanks for watching. Until next time.